Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly here, the old salty dog John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Ted, how are you
Good
this
morning.
afternoon? Morning, afternoon.
Man, I am doing great.
It's 5 o'clock
I'm doing
somewhere.
great. Yeah, I haven't been there yet, so I'm doing good.
I hear you. Well, I'm here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, as you can
see that.
The backdrop here, and I was just listening to him for a show that was on before ours, talking about football season, which for the Gators
already
is
football
2 weeks away, but college actually starts Thursday night, so we're literally right around the corner.
We sure are. I can't believe how fast it's going by. But yeah, we sure look forward to the new coach and the new year. This may be the year of the Gator. What do you think, John?
Well, hopefully we won't have to wait till next year or whatever. It'll be interesting for sure. And I'm right here in the heart of it all, as you can see with the helmets behind me. But before we get into the kind of meat and potatoes, I always like to invite people to make the call. Call Freddie. He is the kind of the nuts and bolts behind us here, behind everything you see here. And we need you to make that call, become a sponsor, a supporter of the show. Of course, like what we're doing, share what we're doing. But since we're mentioned sports at the beginning, let's talk a little bit about what happened in Washington, D.C. yesterday. We had the first ever, I believe, Grand Prix race through the Capitol. The probably the fastest traffic has moved there since the horse and buggy days. But a gentleman,
Good point there, John.
A gentleman named Kyle Kirkwood won the IndyCar race in downtown D.C., celebrating the U.S.'s 250th birthday. And by every account I've heard, it was a fantastic event.
Well, it had to be. I mean, and I give President Trump kudos because he is a promoter and he knows how to draw a crowd. And to do that, I think it's just great because Americans love auto racing, and it's before the football season really kicks into gear. And to go around Washington, D.C., around all the monuments and just see all that prettiness that we have up there. I don't know if that's the right word, prettiness. That's a word, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll do.
Works in the country.
Yeah, well, I want to play a quick video of it because, you hear all this stuff about President Trump and he's underwater and he's hated and all this kind of stuff. But he and Melania got a pretty good welcome
sure did.
to that crowd here. So let's play this quick video and we'll come back and talk a little bit about it. It sounded to me like they kind of liked the president there. I'm sure if they
I kind of picked up on that too.
Yeah, if they'd have been booing, they'd have picked that up on every neighborhood around. But, one of the things that I heard a little tidbit that I thought was interesting, and in the scheme of things, it's probably not that important, but they were originally going to do the race where it went right down by the Capitol, not in the backdrop, but literally at the edge of it there. But I guess there's a rule within certain parameter of the Capitol Hill, you can't have any advertising whatsoever. And they were trying to talk about the first I'd heard of this was a couple of days ago. They were trying to get Congress to vote an exception because, the cars are decorated with advertisement. But Chuck Schumer, of all people, I'm not necessarily saying he was wrong, but he would not procedurally allow that vote to come before the Senate. So rather than fight it, they just dropped it. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they'll take money from anybody basically,
Yeah,
but they didn't
right.
want the cars driving by the Capitol with STP on them, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, Chucky, he doesn't know anything about a race car, anyways. He wants to ride on public transport or in his chauffeured SUV with
Yeah, well,
protection around him.
he definitely doesn't know how to cook a hamburger. We've seen that. He put cheese on a raw hamburger.
Can
But
you
anyway,
can you imagine him and Elizabeth Warren doing a barbecue?
yeah,
I'm
drinking
gonna
a
drink
beer
here
like
this
that.
beer.
It's crazy, man. They try to act normal or something. It's just weird. Period. But so anyway, it was a great event. Apparently, I'm not a huge race fan, but I certainly have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And congratulations to Kyle Kirkwood for winning the inaugural Indy race for celebrating 250. There is talk about potentially doing it at an annual thing, but we'll wait and see about that. But Ted,
That would be a good thing. I mean, if they did that, you talk about changing the economics up there and the dynamics. I think it would be a great thing. Just to break the monotony up there, the staleness of it. They need something to refresh it. So I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I think you're right about that because one of the things that I think Donald Trump does deserve some credit, because we're going to probably give him a hard time here on a couple things in a minute, but he has not only turned DC around from a cultural aspect and crime, but he's put DC back on the map as far as a go-to place where you feel good about it. I think most Americans actually feel pretty good about Washington, D.C. right now. I'm not talking about the
I tell
politics, I'm
you,
talking about the city.
it is a different vibe when I go up there, especially when you're walking around on the streets. It just seems people aren't as guarded. Um, I see a lot of our National Guards up there, and I make sure I go out of my way to thank them and tell them how much we appreciate them. And you can just see them kind of beam up. And Trump has changed the face of DC. It had a bad reputation, and it was well deserved. You look at the people that got shot and carjacked, members of Congress being carjacked. Um, and you just don't hear about that. Crime is way down. Of course, they just elected a new socialist mayor up there, so we're going to see how that goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, he's done a good job on that. You feel safer up there, I can tell you that.
Well, Ted, on our Friday show, at the very end of it, you brought up this topic, and we're going to get into it more in the after the break. But you brought about up this topic about the beef cattle and all, and I
Right.
started looking into some things because it's very interesting. But over the weekend, kind of in a companion way, there's this war with Canada now. Apparently, we're at a trade war with them. And as I began to dig into it and thinking about the beef cattle situation and the import, really and truly, and nobody, I don't think we could have a better expert on this than you, sir. And I say that in all
You're so
sincerity.
kind.
But our farmers are getting caught up right now. American farmer, which is they are the envy of the world, are getting caught up in a bunch of different kind of battles and skirmishes that really is taking away from their primary mission, which is to grow crops, raise cattle and that type of thing, and literally not only feed their families in the United States, but the breadbasket of the world. And it's probably an unfair position to put them in, but they're really in the middle of political and trade wars right now, don't you think?
Yeah, they are, and they're being used as a pawn, unfortunately. You go back to J.D. Vance on Iran on the negotiation. He says, "Oh, we've got it worked out. Iran's going to buy soybeans and all these things." It was all completely fabricated. It was all BS, John. And now you've got the cattlemen in here, and this goes back. I was trying to find the editorial I wrote, and I couldn't find it, but this was back probably in the spring when President Trump was going to allow Argentinian beef come in for two reasons. One, our beef prices are high, and number two, it was to help the president in Argentina to help their economy. And the thing that people need to know is we're losing over 400 ranchers a month, at least that many, if not more than double that a month. Now, keep in mind, our cattle numbers are down. Our cattle numbers are down. Beef production is up, and there's a reason for that. It's because we've got better genetics, carcass quality or carcass weight back in I think it was 2020 was about 670 pounds per carcass after they dressed the animal and they got where they're going to cut it into the retail cuts. Today, that carcass is 900 some pounds. And so we're producing about a third more beef, pounds of beef per animal than we were, and we're on less land. So we're at a point where numbers of cattle are down. They're down to the level they were in the late 40s or early 50s. And it's a supply and demand issue here. And when you bring in Argentinian beef or from any other country, they're bringing in, I think it's 300 metric tons of ground beef. That ground beef goes into the market. And that's one of the things that is the most bought. You know, you buy your fast food restaurants, grocery stores, weekend picnics. And so it comes in, but it does not help the cattle producers at all. In fact, it suppresses the cattle prices that we have in here. And then the thing that really drives this is on agriculture, as you well know, are your input costs. It's diesel, it's labor, fertilizer. Then you look at the other stuff for your cattle, it's your vaccines, your antibiotics, and all that. Fertilizers, seeds, vaccines, antibiotics are all controlled by China, anywhere from 30% to 100%. And then you look at what's going on in Iran and the chronically high prices of fuel that we have. Those input costs are going in today. The consumers are going to feel that in a year and a half in everything they buy. So the prices of beef are going to go up. This is a temporary band-aid. To me, it's a political stunt to have the president look at what I'm doing to bring down prices of beef, and he put pressure on the companies to lower their prices too. This is a temporary fix, and if it keeps the majority, I don't even want to say I'm okay with that. I just think it's terrible politics. Fix the problem. Get your energy prices down. Incentivize people to go into ranching. And if you look at the ag sector, John, they make up less than 2% of the United States population, the whole ag sector. The farmers are aging. I think the average age of a farmer today is roughly 64 to 65 years of age. That next generation doesn't want to go in. So when those farmers leave, what's going to fill those farms? It's going to be AI centers, solar farms, condominiums. You know, it just depends where they are. It's not going to be agriculture. We have already become a net importer of food in this country. And I mean, George Washington, the founders are so smart in this. If you don't have food security, you do not have national security. And those are just the things on the outside. I'm working with some people up in DC on some biotech stuff. And in South Africa and Botswana, they have a foot and mouth disease outbreak. And they think it's come from an ISIS terrorist cell that brought in the foot and mouth disease from a foreign country. And it's in their cattle herds and it's decimated that. And then we've got a link the other day where it was a message on somebody's phone that says, I've been around the cattle in South Africa. I've rubbed my clothes all over their nose and their drool and on their feet. And I've got it in plastic bags and I'm coming to America. These are real threats. And if we get that here in America, prices are going to be astronomical. So I guess on one side, anything you can do to get the prices down. But in reality, that's just a temporary fix and it's going to put more farmers out. We need to be more on promoting agriculture, getting people into that, and then harden our biosecurity.
Absolutely.
That was probably
Well,
more than you wanted, but
no, I was going to talk in depth about it, but we can go ahead and talk about it now and after the break. But I was wanting to talk originally about the war with Canada, but we'll get back into that in a minute. Let's stay on this cattle issue while we're on it here. Let me scroll forward here just a little bit. Uh, okay, sorry about that. I look like I messed it up. Here we go.
Well,
So
that's all right. I'll
President
fill it in while you're looking.
No,
You got
that's
it?
fine. Yeah. So President Trump, we're fast forwarding to what we were going to talk about after the break, but we'll go ahead and get that and we'll come back to the other story. President Trump announced a 90-day suspension of higher tariffs on 300,000 metric tons of imported ground beef, and he's saying that this is going to help us allow the domestic cattle herd to increase during that time and take pressure on them. But you just made the case that that is not necessarily so. And apparently, some other Republicans specifically agree with you, Ted, because Senator Katie Britt from Alabama and Montana Senator Tim Sheehy, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and the Alabama Cattle Association have all warned that additional imports could depress cattle prices and discourage ranchers from doing exactly what you said they need to do, which is rebuild their herd. What are your thoughts about that aspect of it?
They're spot on. They know the cattle industry. I don't know who Trump's getting his advice from, but he needs to fire him. For his famous lines: "You're fired." Um, to take a cow and take her out of production to replace her, you've got to get a cow pregnant. That's a little over 9 months, and then once that calf is born, about 50% are female, 50% are male. After that calf is born, it's going to take about 20 to 22 months to get her pregnant, and then it's another a little over 9 months to have a baby. So now she's pushing 2.5 to 3 years of age, and then that baby won't go to market for another year and a half to 2 years. So what is that? It's about 4.5, 5 years before you start building your market, your inventory of cattle up. And we are going backwards. Like I said, we're losing over 400 ranches a month, and when these ranches move, they don't come back. And so the numbers are going to go down. And we've already squeezed the most we can get out of genetics as far as pounds of weight gain per pounds of feed. And the farmers and the research universities and the people that study genetics have done a fantastic job. But you get to an end where you can't do that anymore. To bring in that beef, number one, it's a risk to our food supply, just through pathogens, E. coli, any of those are the mild ones. You bring in foot and mouth disease or African swine fever, our cattle inventory will drop precipitously, and so we need to focus on shoring up the young ranchers and farmers that want to go into the cattle industry, and then help them do that, and then stay out of the market. And this again, John, this is what the government did with health insurance. Obamacare was going to fix it. And you heard me last week say 85% of Americans had their own health insurance, either through their employer or they paid it for themselves. There was 15% that didn't have it. So government screws it up for everybody. And now look at, nobody has the insurance they want or can afford. And that's what they're going to do with driving these policies of Trump are going to weaken the cattle market. It'll put people out of business, and then we become more dependent on a foreign nation. This is a bad policy. And going back to Canada, again, I don't know who's advising them on foreign policy. Um, Canada is one of our number one. It's our closest ally. We've had a great relationship with them, and we've had skirmishes on lumber, on dairy products, on wine, and things like that. But those are things you can work out. And if you're friends, yeah, you can agree to disagree, but you move together to make your country stronger. For us, alienate them. We've already seen Mark Carney has said we're going to build our own military-industrial base, and the heck with America. And he's moved closer to the European Union, and that whole bloc has moved closer to China. The end result is America. There's going to be a lot of catching up to do and mending relationships in this next administration.
Well, while you were
And I
talking
hope
to,
it's not. I hope it's not J.D. Vance, because I think that guy's just a puppet. Somebody's pulling his strings. The stuff he has said starting with Zelensky in that first meeting in the Oval Office back in January, to him with Iran saying, "Oh, well, they've agreed to buy our soybeans and this." That was all BS, John. And he's just a puppet. Let's hope he's not our president.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But
He's got
I, I
pretty
hear
eyeliner, though.
I hear you. I hear you. So when I think about different types of things that you talked about, people growing up and deciding they want to become farmers. Traditionally, farming has been generational kind of thing,
Hmm.
and I'm not opposed to that in any way, shape, or form. But
I would hope not.
here's the thing though that makes it different than any pretty much any other industry. Let's say you want to become a contractor and a big developer. Well,
Hmm.
the deck is stacked against you somewhat, but we all know guys and gals, I suppose, who have literally, gotten a craft or a trade, studied, got their license, worked out of a back of a pickup truck, and one day they kept going, and next thing you know, they're multi-million dollar housing developers. You and I both personally know people like that, and you could probably say that about almost any profession out there. If you want to become a doctor, study hard. You don't have to come from a wealthy family. Study hard, do that. You want to crack into what you've done as a veterinarian, and you have had a pretty big business. There is a path to doing that. The problem with farming that makes it unique is in order to be a very productive farmer, you got to have land. You got to have some land to actually grow crops or raise cattle. That is a big stretch to work your way up to land. You follow what I'm saying? It's a different than almost any other enterprise. Maybe I'm not seeing it right, but I think that is going to be a difficult thing for someone who didn't grow up in farming to all of a sudden aspire to become a productive farmer is the land issue.
That's what a lot of people think, and I can see the rationale in that. But John, I know too many people that started with nothing, and they're just great farmers. I'll give you an example. It'd be Herman and Virginia. Um, oh shoot, I forgot I just had their name on my last. Um, Herman and Virginia out in the Cross City area, the peanut farmers. They started off with nothing, and they bought a few acres and they rented some acres. They cleared it. They did this, and then they just kept being profitable, and they rented more land, and then they wound up buying it. And so that's something I've seen too many times happen, and it comes back to something more basic than that. If a person has a want and desire, they're going to succeed. And you brought it up if they're willing to do the work. Carolyn and I are perfect examples. I know too many people like Richard and Cecile Fiegel. I mean, started off with nothing and they built a huge automotive repair industry, and they're great sponsors of ours. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But that all comes down to the American dream, John. And the American dream is there for anybody willing to work and just work, and then keep advancing yourself. And it's hard to do that in any other country. Now, I would agree with you. If I wanted to do that in a foreign country, Germany, England, Holland, that would be real hard. But in this country, you have ownership of land, and you can take advantage of the opportunity and laws that we have in place here. So I don't want to discourage anybody, because if you want to be a farmer, go out and be a farmer. We need you, and it's a great life. I've worked at agriculture all my life.
Yeah, there's no doubt it is, and I don't mean to dissuade people from doing it. I just think there's some unique challenges, but I could be
Oh
wrong.
yeah, there are.
But it's back to this idea of this lower beef prices with this important stuff. It kind of creates a contradiction, if you will, Ted, because I know that one of the reasons why Trump is doing it, I mean, I'm not saying it's totally political by any stretch, but he is trying to drop prices over the next 90 days or so leading up to the midterms. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. But the problem is that it's going to make it less potentially attractive for ranchers to expand production over the next several years because, you know, all the reasons you just said. If cattle prices drop, but expenses for them go up, I think there's a contradiction there in lowering beef prices and building the herd at the same time. I just don't see how that works.
Yeah, it's government manipulating the markets. And he says, Trump says participating companies have committed to selling the imported beef at roughly 25% below current market prices. Um, like I said, it's a campaign gimmick. It may give a little bit of relief to the consumers, but the long term effect will be that much more detrimental because I think you'll see more farmers go out because if prices drop, it's not going to help them. The ground beef, when the NCBA comes out against us, and that's the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, when they come out against us saying this is bad policy, I agree. And they came out last time saying this is bad policy. So um, Trump is trying to get through the midterms. We've got to keep the majority. God forbid if we go the other way.
Yeah, and he's going to cause some more political pressure on himself because if these ranchers start going down, then it's going to, places like Iowa and places like that are pretty strong for Trump are going to turn away from him. Texas, Florida, people underestimate how much cattle is actually grown in places like Florida.
Yeah, Florida is the seventh or ninth largest stocker state in the union. That means we supply that many calves out of Florida, and we've got a great cattle industry, strong conservatives, just great people, the salt of the earth people. They work the land, and we need to support them. This is bad policy, and it's not getting at the root cause. The root cause is make our farm incentives stronger for people to go into farming, especially young ranchers, and have the programs the Future Farmers of America at all your schools. Really beef that program up so you incentivize these kids in there. The research and development that goes into new strains and genetics that go into new productive crops, and then work on the labor bill to make it. That's one of the variables in farming. You got weather, labor, fuel prices, and the market. Those are all variables that you can't really do a lot about, but government can fix the ag worker program. And I'm so irritated because that was the last bill I think we put in that we put a tremendous amount of effort into that, and that would remove one of the variables for farmers. And you know, let's see how this works out. We'll have to report back on this and give a synopsis of it.
Yeah, well, here's the cycle, the potential cycle that the president, if he goes forward with this beef importing and trying to rebuild the herd and all, this is what I kind of fear. And I don't know, you're more of an expert on it than me, but I see, okay, we have the base problem is we have a low domestic herd. High beef prices, government increases imports. That's what Donald Trump's talking. Cattle prices then drop further. Ranchers retain fewer heifers, which is really the key to this because one bull can service many heifers. It's about heifers. And herd rebuilding slows. Domestic supply remains tight, so the prices go back up. Then we import more beef to lower them back down. It creates a cycle that does not solve, and not only does not solve, but exacerbates the long-term problem where if it keeps going like that, we literally could become totally dependent on imported beef.
You're absolutely right. And the government needs to focus on that, which they're supposed to do, provide for the national defense of the country, period. That's their number one goal. And so you want to know why the price of beef is up high? Look at the value of the dollar. $100 back 20 years ago would buy $100 worth of product. Today, it would cost you $130 to $140 to buy that same product because the value of the dollar has been suppressed, and that comes from printing money. It devalues our dollar. We're at $40 trillion plus, 40 plus trillion in debt, spending over $3 billion a day in interest. And people say, well, how does the government printing more money devalue our dollar? You being a good country boy from the South near Sonny's, you know what a sweet tea is, obviously.
Absolutely.
All right. It's a staple in the South. So if I give you a glass of sweet tea and it goes down, and you add either water or more ice to it and it dilutes it, by the time, if you keep doing that over a period of time, you can hold up that same glass and you got water because you've diluted the value of the sweet tea out of it. And that's what's happening to our dollar. Every time they print money, dollar drops, dollar drops. And so that drives up everything you buy. So it's not just the fuel prices, which are gone up because of this war with Iran, but it's the devaluation of the dollar. And think how the government in cities like New York that say, oh, the government's got to fix housing. I don't want them to fix housing. I want them to get out of the way because if they get in there, it'll be like Obamacare on insurance. The fix that the Democrats want to do with Medicare for all, there are no insurance companies. So if the government fixed housing, it's all government controlled housing, and there's no incentive for the builder out there. And it's the same thing in the cattle industry, in anything that the government wants to do. Focus on that which you're supposed to do, leave everything else alone. Let the free market decide and let the states, counties, and local government decide it. And that's where it comes down to us, John, we the people. If we don't like what's going on in our cities and towns, throw the people out.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a war that might be brewing in some form or fashion between the United States and what we call our hat, the Canadian, the people of Canada. We might be in some type of war with them literally any day now. And we'll come back and talk about that. Take us to break, Ted.
No, we appreciate everybody watching far and wide. Please send this message out, our link to this show. We're counting on you to get the word out, and we depend on sponsors, donations, whatever you want to send in. We appreciate it. But the biggest thing we need is your attentiveness and sending. Tell somebody else, hey, listen to this website. And we want to thank Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair. They've been in business for over 20 years. They'll fix anything from a gas engine to your most complicated diesel Cummins Duramax engine that you have. Call them for an appointment, 352-495-2485. They're open from Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and we'll see you after the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
Welcome back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast with yours truly, the old salty dog John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Well, Ted, when we went to break, we kind of gave a hint about being at war, and I'm not talking about Iran. Apparently, we are about to enter into a full-scale trade war with Canada. And I'm using as a template a CNBC article. It says here, U.S. and Canada have failed to reach a new trade deal agreement after 3 days of negotiations. So this it was supposed to end Wednesday. They gave an extension to Saturday, but apparently we left our negotiations there. And essentially, it looks like we're going to be in a trade war. What are your thoughts about that in general, Ted? And then we'll get into some specifics.
Well, you've got somebody, Mark Carney in Canada, their prime minister, who number one doesn't like America. He doesn't like Trump. He probably likes them all policies. He is getting close. This is something that's going to ice Um, and I think these kind of disputes, when you look at our history with Canada, we've got a very long, very good relationship with Canada. And I think this is something we don't need to have a trade war with them. Um, and, I just hope they work these things out quickly. And I want President Trump and his cabinet to focus on the things they're supposed to do. Get a resolve to what's going on in Iran, build up our military, build up our munitions, work on the economy to bring prices down. And you're not going to do it by importing beef. It'll be a temporary fix, but it'll have a long-term consequence that are negative to the cattle farmer. So to do this back with Canada, there's got to be a better way to do this than doing a tit for tat and getting into a pushing and shoving match with our closest ally.
Yeah, I want to play a video clip of Mark Carney, who is the Prime Minister of Canada, and from his perspective as to where we are, how we got here, and what they're going to do about it. Check this out, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Canada will match Washington's new tariffs dollar for dollar in order to protect Canadian workers, farmers, families, and businesses. Our response will be concentrated in sectors such as steel, dairy, appliances, agricultural equipment, pulp and paper, and electronics. We'll also include products that are currently subject to unjustified Section 232 and 338 tariffs.
Well, Ted, one of the things I've been hearing a lot is that, and I was listening to some shows on the way into the studio today, that Carney is kind of winning the PR war with this, and that Donald Trump has positioned Carney to be kind of more statesmanlike and that type of thing. And his presence on the world scene has been elevated. So Carney, he's a politician as well. He probably looks at this not only for what he thinks is best for Canada, but it's his moment in the sun, and he's being kind of elevated by all of this. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's what I'm hearing, and I can see it myself.
Yeah, no, you're seeing that. You're seeing that with a lot of people around the world as far as leaders. And, Trump said he didn't want to be an isolationist, but his actions are pushing us in that direction. And that's not all bad. I go back to George Washington quite often. Honest and fair trade with all nation, entanglement with none. We need trade. We need it for our industrial base, our manufacturing, our ag products, everything that America does that we do well. And when you're arguing with your closest neighbors, it's just not a good thing. And then put that on top of everything else that's going on. Russia and Ukraine, Iran, Israel and Hamas, or Palestine. And then don't forget China. Oh, let's not stray away from Cuba or Venezuela. So you've got all these hot spots around the world. Is this a time to really alienate any allies that we have? And then the pushback we've had from NATO, and we are adjusting, who we are as Americans, and we need to come out of this stronger. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Carney is coming out where he looks the adult in the room on these things. And there's some things that need to be adjusted. It's like and these are things that have gone on a long time. Dairy products, timber are the big ones. And then, commodities like wine and things like that go back and forth. Those are the things that are the biggest, in the biggest controversy with Canada.
Well, one person that could really come out on the tail end of this, and it obviously would impact Donald Trump, is Susan Collins in Maine. I mean, she has reached out to the president and basically said that they need to solve this with Canada. And, she is in a tight race. And if inflation and hits, it could hit Maine a little bit harder and quicker due to Canadian things because of the timber and all kind of different issues right there. So this could literally impact whether or not the Republicans hold on to the Senate, potentially.
No, I think you're absolutely right on that. I mean, and you look at the guy she's running against. That guy's just a disaster. He's got 2 or 3 kids by a second cousin. He's not married to her, and I don't, it's just a different world up there in Maine. But the bottom line is the more we get into these spats, the more isolated it becomes, it weakens America, and it breaks the trust with people around the country as they look at us. And that's not a healthy thing for America, with the politics that are going on. And let's hope we get through this. And John, this tariff fight we're having right now is not something that just popped up. Go back to NAFTA under Clinton when Ross Perot said, if you pass NAFTA, that sucking sound you hear will be jobs and manufacturing leaving America. That happened. We know that happened. You look at the textile mill in the Carolinas, all up the northeast coast. There was a lot of textile furniture that evaporated, and then USMCA, the United States, Canada, Mexico Free Trade Agreement. Trump was saying what a great thing this is. That was a terrible deal for Florida farmers because it put us in direct competition with Mexico on seasonally grown produce. They have the same growing season as we do, but they got to ship stuff in here duty free, and they're paying $8 or pennies a day on labor. We're paying 15 to 18, $20 a day, no, an hour on labor. And Mexico's bringing this stuff up. That same agreement was with Mexico or Canada, and so that was a bad trade deal. And I'm proud that I was the only Florida member that voted against this. And I still remember arguing with Secretary Lighthizer, our trade representative, in Vern Buchanan's office, and I was a hell no on that. And we had some pretty strong words with each other. But the point of that is that what we're seeing today is because of those deals back made. That was for Trump won, and here we are. And this is where it comes back to foreign policy is so critical that we get it right. We pretty much set it in stone with the ability to change it as needed. But you want that policy that goes beyond each administration so you don't get this flipping back and forth. And this is what I call the American agenda that we need to have codified into law. We haven't done it, and this is what we're seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the problem too is we talked about farmers in the first segment, but this could impact American farmers as well because if
Sure.
Canada retaliates against us and imposes more tariffs on stuff like US beef, pork, dairy, grains, and other agricultural products, it may drive Canada to start trying to do business with other suppliers like South America and Europe and elsewhere. And the problem is that once you start those supply chains going, it may be difficult, even if the trade issues are resolved, for the American farmers to get back into Canada if they are driven out right now.
No, you're right. I mean, that's a great point you brought up. Once you disrupt those markets and lose them, it takes forever to get them back. Canada's got a population of, I just looked it up, 41 million people. And so our whole thing was we wanted them to take more dairy products. One of their biggest industry is dairy up there. And these are family farms that have been around for generations, and they can only absorb so much foreign agricultural products in there. They've got to support their own. So they have some protectionist policies, and you can't fault them for that. But there's things that they can allow come in that they are short of. Like on dairy, they ship a lot of their what we call whey or powdered milk. They'll ship it to foreign countries. So even though they produce a lot, they're shipping that out. And those are things that we can work out. These are silly. I don't want to call them silly wars, or yeah, I guess it is a war. Disputes over trade. These could be worked out a lot better, and then just instead of drawing a red line, that draws them closer. Because, like you said, and you're absolutely accurate. We break this agreement, they're going to go to South America and get that stuff shipped up, and then they're going to bypass America. And like you said, it'll take forever to get these relationships back, even with the next administration. Depending on who they are, it's going to take a while to get that trust back. And it's not just Canada; it's all the European countries, it's South America, it's our Asian countries, and so we've got ourselves in a pickle here. In the meantime, China's just sitting there building their military up and expanding around the world.
Yeah, well, there's another thing that I never, and I kind of giggle about it, but it could be serious. Another thing that no one ever talks about that I saw this a few years ago: toilet paper. Toilet paper could impact Americans because apparently, Ted, and I did not know this, but the timber that they grow in Canada, about 90% of our higher quality toilet paper tissue comes from pulp from Canada. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. One of the reasons we moved to Palatka, Putnam County, is they've got the pulp mill here, and it employs a lot of people. They get over 500 loads of timber a day, and within 45 minutes, once they take a log, it goes into paper, and they produce a lot of toilet paper right here. So we should never be out here in Putnam County.
Well, I tell you, I worked at the paper mill quite a bit doing electrical work out there, and something
Oh,
to
did
this,
you?
yeah, oh yeah, many times, and something that really amazed me is it's off a tangent, but the how toilet paper is produced. You know, when you try to pull toilet paper off the roll, especially those bigger rolls they come out with now, I have a hard time keeping it from breaking. And I have to do it more than once. But if this is a God's truth, Ted, if you actually watch toilet paper, they create a roll that is bigger than your truck. It's just huge, and they put
It
it
is.
on, and then they pull it, and as it's being pulled off this gigantic roll, it goes down different things and becomes smaller and smaller rolls. I don't see how they could pull that roll. I still hadn't figured it out without breaking it when I can't even pull it off the toilet paper rack at the house without breaking it.
You need to
It's
buy the
just
higher quality, John.
it's just
You need to
amazing,
get you
son.
some Charmin. Yeah, Georgia Pacific. I've been able to tour that plant, and it is an amazing production model that they go through there, and the engineers that design all that. But again, it goes back to starts off with the trees, and let's just hope President Trump resolves this quickly, so you'll have the easier tearing toilet paper.
Absolutely. Well, we only got a few minutes left in the show, and I wanted to kind of just touch on a few kind of topics because, man, the news cycle is just crazy right now. But the latest thing on Iran is that we're supposed to start implementing these incredible sanctions against them, what they call it, economic D-Day, and I guess they're about to take effect. Apparently, we're able right now, we've increased the amount of ships going through the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz by about 400%, but it's still down 90% from what it was before the war started. You talk about inflation. Right now in Iran, I forgot what they call their currency, but it's 1,000,000 to 1 against the US dollar right now. 1,000,000 to 1.
Wow.
And very similar to what happened in Weimar Germany when you took a wheelbarrow load of Deutschmarks or whatever they called them back then to buy a loaf of bread, which may not be a good thing. But Iran, something is going to come to a head there pretty quickly because if it's 1,000,000 to 1, you can imagine what's happening on the streets there right now or about to happen.
I can't imagine. Their currency is the real, and you're right about the Weimar Republic in Germany. They got so bad that they were only printing one side of the paper because the inflation was going up so high, and it was a warning sign that the end is here, and that's what they're seeing. And this again, I'm not in any briefings with President Trump, obviously, but if you're going to go in there, we should have had this economic pressure from day one and just forced them to get to the point where they said, we're done. We give up. We're going to be nice from this point on. And then they have to decide what to do with the IRGCs and the radicals. There's certainly several Middle Eastern countries that live in peace. And so they can do it. They just have to have the willpower to do it. And if you don't have the willpower to do it, you can't. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, let's hope that the Iranian people can stand up and get rid of the bad people.
Yeah, and as far as like the economic sanctions and all of that, eh, are you going to carry that over to people doing business with Iran? Because if you do, and I think
Yeah.
you have to make it successful. But then it opens up interesting because Turkey has a trade agreement with them. Pakistan has a trade agreement with them. Obviously, China does. So do you start impacting sanctions against Turkey, Pakistan, and China? Because if you don't, then it really doesn't amount to anything. So it's a lot trickier than it sounds.
Oh, it is. And this is something I argued when I was on foreign affairs. We throw sanctions here, the sanctions there, everywhere's a sanction. And it gets to where we weaken the effect of sanctions. We use them too often and they're never enforced. And we do an okay job forcing, but we always, when we look back in hindsight, there's always been cheating that we didn't catch. That's just us. Then you have these foreign countries, and you have countries like Canada shipping oil to Mexico. We're trying to isolate Mexico. Um, we need to not create any new problems like a trade war with Canada. We need to start solving these problems, and Trump's got 2 years at best to do that. But when you start throwing these sanctions around and you're telling other countries that they must put these sanctions on, and they have 80% of their oil coming out of Iran to China, you're starting to dictate to another country what they must do. And that causes more resentment towards Americans. And it's bad foreign policy again.
Yeah, and the thing that I really worry about too is, okay, if it's 1,000,000 to 1, go back to what that analogy with Germany. What
Yeah.
happens if the Iranian people pour out into the streets again and get mowed down? Which is what will happen if they do, absent some change between now and that minute. Then what do we do? So there is so many things. I mean, it's kind of like I think it was Colin Powell talked about it. If you break it, you own it, kind of thing.
He sure
And
did.
uh, and
And he's
right now
absolutely right.
that's kind of where we are with Iran. Really, I mean, I don't know what we do if it falls totally apart right now.
It is. I mean, this was a problem we didn't need to go into unless they had a missile pointing somewhere in the United States. We think that day was going to come anyways. Again, it's just poor foreign policy. And this is where you've heard me fault J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as much as I like Marco. They should have been the adults in the room said, Mr. President, this is terrible. If you do this, I quit and walk away from it. So I'm not going to support this because he needs that kind of talk back to get him to really face reality again. And I'm saying that not knowing what they knew, and I may be way off base here. I just hope it comes to a quick resolution, and that Canada stays our ally. For them to start creating a military-industrial base up in Canada, they've got plenty of steel, and then they work with the European Union. We're cut out of that. They're going to isolate themselves from us, and then we'll be the ones on the outside looking in. And this is a time for real strong diplomacy. And you may get some egg on your face, Mr. President, but it's not a bad thing to be a little bit humbled. Use some humility. It goes a long ways if you're sincere about it.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but I want to play a promised video because things are still pretty good in this country up to a point, and this video is from California last week. You talk about, I guess, luxury problems. You want to know how psycho our country could be. What happens in California used to spread all the way across the nation. God help us if that stays true. But listen to this video, Ted, and we'll come back and close the show out on it.
I'd like to propose that Los Angeles consider a pilot program for free hygienic sexual relief clinics, primarily serving the homeless and unhoused. This means equality. It means private sexual relief through masturbation or, where appropriate and consensual, with a partner, all funded by public tax dollars and managed with professional oversight. It's about allowing the homeless to have the same comforts and privacy that we have today.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So there you have someone on the floor of the House in California advocating that it's the people's responsibility to create private places for homeless people to masturbate. basically, and hookers or whatever. I mean, literally saying that it's you and my obligation, if we were citizens of California, to provide a safe place for homeless people to masturbate. God almighty, Ted. I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless after that.
How do we go backwards in society and evolution, I guess, or humanity? I say, how do you go backwards to this degree? Here, Karen Bass, where they had all those fires out in the Palisades that were started by, it looks like that Uber driver that was just mad. He didn't like Palisades or rich people. He starts a fire, destroys billions of dollars of property. They haven't built anything back. They can't get permits, but she's permitting people that are takers from society versus letting people build back their homes that support society through their jobs and taxes. These people are on tax. They're not on the tax paying taxes, and they're going to promote that. And the things that you promote, you get more of. And I got dinged in my first election against the person I beat, the incumbent. We were talking about unwed mothers, and I says, and this is going to make some people mad. I must still say it because it's true. Unwed mothers, if you want more unwed mothers, keep giving them free child care, all these things, all these benefits, living expenses, EBT and all that. You're going to get more of that. It's kind of like if you want a free cat, put more cat food out and you'll get all the free cats you want. And it's the same thing in the national parks. Don't feed the animals. Don't feed the wild animals because they become dependent on you. And this goes back to that essay Benjamin Franklin wrote in 1866. I think it was called basically the price of corn and the effect on the poor. And he says, in his observation, and this was written in 1866, so it's probably from his years from 1860 up to that point, his observation says that the more you do for people, the less they do for themselves and the poorer they become. The less you do for people, the more they do for themselves and the wealthier they become. I mean, that's just a fact of life. And California hasn't learned that. They're thinking they're helping these people. They're hurting the society as a whole. And these people, if you help one of them, that's great. But I don't think you help very many of them. And you're hurting more people than you're helping. It's a terrible policy. And that's the stuff that Gavin Newsom supports. And he wants to be president. Give me a break. Fix your own state. When you get it fixed, come talk to us about being president. We don't want you.
They're trying to go nationwide. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide, make the call, call Freddie. Take us out, Ted.
No, I appreciate everybody again. And like I said, we're getting reports of our show going around the world, different areas, and that's due to you. And we really appreciate you sending this out. If you've got 5 people on your email list, say, hey, watch this podcast. They might even learn something, but you can tell them that it's good for comic relief too at times. We want to thank our sponsor, Archer Automotive, great friends of ours, great people, great agricultural family. And these are people that built a business from the ground up. They're not billionaires. They didn't start up as billionaires, but they've created a awesome industry or business. Please visit them, Archer Automotive. Their phone number, call for an appointment, 352-495-2485. And they take care of all your automotive desires or needs, from your car to your diesel truck, and you might even get them to work on a lawnmower every now and then. Their address is 1590 Southwest Archer Road. And tell them you heard about them on the Political Pirate podcast with yours truly and the old salty dog, John. Y'all take care, and we'll see you Friday afternoon.